So please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Vaughan.
We all appreciate you coming out here and having passion and a heart and wanting more knowledge about what I consider the most clear and present danger to sustaining life on our planet. GMO foods, GE foods, call them what you want. They're toxic, they're poisonous, and your body has never seen them before. So they're allergenic. I'm going to quote from Dr. Don Huber, and if you get out there on the internet, you'll be able to see a lot about him. He is the Emeritus Professor of Plant Pathology at Purdue University, and he is old. And he's been around for a long time, and he is wise, and he still has passion. And what he says is that what we have in our fields, our farms, our homes, is not natural anymore. The increased disease, pest pressure, and empty calories are not natural, they're not normal, they're not healthy. Corn used to be the healthiest plant you could grow. Now, multiple diseases, pests, and weak plants are the common denominator of quote-unquote modern hybrids, which are actually GE or GM. Over 3 decades ago is when we started using Roundup, we started using glyphosate, and it wasn't long after that that we started introducing the GE foods. And everyone calls it substantially equivalent. And this is basically hoodwinking us. It's also, unfortunately, hoodwinking our president. This is one place where I think Obama has it all wrong. We need to let him know that. I've been trying to figure out how to get to be one of those 5 letters that he reads every night. It takes so much more work these days to eat a healthy meal. It's not just the trans fats and high fructose corn syrup. It's not just getting the nutrients right and the right proportion of protein and carbohydrates and healthy fats. It's not just avoiding unhealthy fats. Now we have to deal with GMO in our food. The problem is that we were sold a lie. And farmers were sold a lie. And I can't criticize farmers for trying out GMO products because they sounded great. They were told you'll have higher yields, they'll be better for people, they'll last longer, there'll be more productive crops, the crops will last longer after they are harvested, etc., etc., etc. It's not working out that way. All of those droughts that we had in the Midwest last year? The droughts that hurt the corn and the soybean crops the worst were the GMO crops. I think there is order in the universe. These GMO foods, these GMO crops, actually require 30 to 50% more water. It's not working out the way Monsanto planned it, or locally Syngenta planned it. We have, we're told that all these foods are safe for us to eat, and they are not safe for us to eat. But it's really interesting that most of the research on this is being done on animals in this country and around the world. But what you see published is primarily around the world. So, in Europe, when GE soy was introduced, the amount of allergies in Europe went up 50% within just a couple of years. The Russians stopped using GE soy-based feed when infant mortality of a bunch of rats that they were studying hit 55%. So there's a problem with the GE foods damaging the ability to reproduce healthy rats. Could that apply to humans? Could it apply to cows? Could it apply to goats? You'll see. Austrian scientists said there was a direct link between the decrease in fertility and the genetically modified diet in the rat pups that they studied. You know, they're not giving humans these, they're giving it to rats. Recent studies in Cairo showed that rats given only a 10% GE diet, 10%, 90% was non-GE. After 4 weeks, there was notable shrinkage of kidneys, changes in the liver and spleens, new malignancies, kidney failure, hemorrhages in the intestine, learning and memory problems. Death rates of babies from mothers for GE food increased by 35%. And babies were smaller. Half of them died within 3 weeks. But you know, these are just animals. That's not us. No, we are also beta testing, as I said, these products. The first human study in GEs was back in 1987. It was L-tryptophan. People remember the contamination of L-tryptophan? And there were 1,500 cases of something called eosinophilia myalgia syndrome. So people's muscles hurt and they got extra allergy cells in their blood. And it was blamed on a contaminant. 39 people died. It wasn't a contaminant. It was L-tryptophan that came from a genetically modified source. There has never been any eosinophilic EMS from tryptophan from natural sources. But tryptophan was banned for years because of quote-unquote contamination, but it was actually genetically engineered tryptophan. There are also observational studies on humans that are going on and being published in Brazil. In 2010, the physicians in certain towns where there's a high rate of using genetically engineered foods and lots of glyphosate, lots of Roundup, started noticing that there were more birth defects. They also found more infant deaths, not just birth defects. And they had been increasing since the implementation of the GE crops and increasing the use of pesticides, because they go hand in hand. You put in the crops, you use the pesticides, and then you're told to use more pesticides. So all of these GE foods have much more Roundup inside them, and you eat Roundup. You don't just eat the genetically engineered food, you also eat more Roundup whenever you eat these products. So they got back together in 2011, and everyone was beginning to look at their populations of patients. And I'm not going to read you the whole list, but what they were noticing again was more birth defects, more miscarriages, more deaths. Oh, and there was male sterility, cancer, leukemia, lupus, MS, autoimmune diseases, and I'll explain why. So all kinds of things going on, strokes, etc. So how could genetically modified foods do all of this? I mean, it's hitting every single system in humans' bodies. First, there's the direct toxic effect of the GE food product itself. GE foods, like I said, are completely different from what your body has ever seen. So what is it going to do? It's going to trigger inflammation. Your immune system is basically going to attack it, and it's going to attack the cells that it infects. Oh, you didn't know that the genes could infect your cells? Yeah. The GE foods have a gene inserted into them, and it's sandwiched between the cauliflower mosaic virus on one side and an antibiotic on the other side. So it acts like a wart. It acts like a viral infection. It does this in a plant, and it does it in your body when you eat it. So it's changing the cells in your body. So it's also changing the bacteria in your body. You can kind of see why, since we've been having all of these genetically engineered foods, irritable bowel syndrome has doubled. Inflammatory bowel disease has doubled. Things outside the gut have also doubled. Asthma, allergies, colds, memory problems.
Diabetes.
The second problem with these foods is that the bacteria in our guts exchange DNA. They do this all the time. That's how we get bacterial resistance to different kinds of antibiotics. They exchange DNA with the foods that you're eating that have the genetically engineered DNA. So your own bacteria now are genetically engineered. So one of the things I'm going to tell you to do is run to a health food store and start taking probiotics on a daily basis, because if you were eating any type of processed food, you're getting GMOs, you're getting GE foods, and it's damaging your what's called your the bacteria in your gut. It's damaging them. So you have to replenish your gut with healthy bacteria every day. Use fermented foods. That's wonderful. I don't have time to ferment foods. I buy them at different health food stores and grocery stores around here. But you have to take probiotics because you're killing off your own. Another problem with these things is the herbicide, the glyphosate, Roundup. The DNA keeps the plant alive while the plant is drenched, not just once, twice, repeatedly with glyphosate. They're sprayed right before they come, right before they're picked, right before they are presented to you in the grocery store. So you are eating Roundup. And Roundup is a chelator. Now I chelate people. I use other kinds of chelators to get rid of lead and mercury and cadmium and other nasty things in our bodies that we collect. But that's what glyphosate does. But it mainly chelates good minerals like manganese and cobalt and iron and copper. So, you wonder, you hear about the food not being as good as it used to be, that it doesn't have the nutritional benefit that it used to. Well, golly gee whiz, there's not as many minerals in the food as there used to be, and it's partly because the soils are depleted, but it's also because we are using Roundup, which is a chelator that binds up those minerals permanently, so the plant doesn't have them. So what happens to a plant that doesn't have the minerals that it needs and can't get the minerals out of the soil that it needs? It's not as strong. It's going to get more diseases. The fruit that it produces is not going to be as high quality. The nutritional value is going to suffer. All of that is because we're using Roundup. The other thing that Roundup does, it also, in addition to chelating minerals, it actually kills bacteria. So you've got the GE food that's changing your bacteria into new weird bacteria, and those new weird bacteria are protected from the Roundup that you're eating while you eat the food. But the Roundup also kills healthy bacteria in the soil, so that the plants cannot get what they need out of the soil. It's actually the bacteria in the soil that help you get a healthy plant. So that's partly why the plants are so weak. All right, I've told you that. Okay, Bt toxin. I don't want to leave that out. Bt toxin was designed many years ago, and it has been found in 93% of pregnant women in this country and 80% of their unborn fetuses. So this is something that you eat in corn. It's Bt corn. It was one of the earliest GE foods. It's out there. I mean, if you were eating any kind of corn that is not organic, you're getting this toxin in your system. And it damages your cells. That's the bottom line. So there are currently 9 different foods. Do y'all know the foods that are already genetically modified? Have you heard those? Corn, soy. What? Rice is not in this country yet, fortunately. Canola, cottonseed oil, anything made with these things. Sugar beets. So unless it says it's made with cane sugar, You're getting it when you eat something that's sweet. You're getting genetically engineered sugar from sugar beets when you eat processed foods. Some of the papaya and some of the pineapple from Hawaii, and a limited number of zucchini and yellow squash. And of course, it's also in all the animals that eat these things, including us. So, the Institute for Responsible Technology, started by Jeffrey Smith, who wrote one of the first books called Seeds of Deception, is a wonderful website to go to. I kind of have a summary of a lot of information on my blog, drvaughan.com. But you need to get educated, and that's what you're getting here. You need to get passionate about that, and hopefully you're going to be passionate as a result of all these different speakers speaking. You want to buy organic whenever you can. You also want to buy those that say non-GMO verified seals on the packages. Avoid the at-risk ingredients. Avoid the things we just talked about. If it doesn't say organic, don't eat it unless you absolutely must do so. Did you know that aspartame is genetically modified? Yep. Okay. Vote for healthier food with your pocketbooks. Don't buy the stuff. Tell farmers at the market, grocers, restaurants. I love this idea about the tip card. Except that I want you to ask the person, do you have organic food here and non-genetically modified food when you sit down? And if they say no, then leave. We have to get to the establishment through their pocketbooks. Get involved in the various campaigns. The Save Monsanto, or what is it, Save Monsanto Act? No.
Monsanto Protection Act.
The Monsanto Protection Act. It is going to this, it's already passed the House. It's going to the Senate this next week. You need to get online this weekend. You need to call your senators, Kay Hagan and Richard Byrd. Guess what party I belong to? You need to call them on Monday. You need to let them know immediately that they need to vote against this monstrosity. This is just not right. Let me see. Be brave. Be very brave. Because a lot of people are going to think you're crazy. And a lot of people are going to put you down and try to argue out of doing this. You are right to do this for yourself, for your family, for the next generations, for the planet. It is such a clear and present danger because people are being fed in the schools and all kinds of places that say, it's okay, it's essentially the same. It is not. It is foreign, it is damaging to our bodies, and it crosses generations. It damages the next generations. Don't use Roundup. That's a duh. And lastly, take probiotics, as I mentioned, or use fermented foods. Do a cleanse twice a year. Just get rid of all that stuff that's in your gut to help you get rid of toxins, etc. And there are all kinds of cleanses. I've written about a fall cleanse and a spring cleanse. They're available. Get a box of something. Do it for at least a week. Use an infrared sauna. Get hot and sweat this stuff out. And take care of yourselves, because our government's not doing it. And unfortunately, let me quote from Dr. Huber again. Oh no, I've got something else for you. Dr. Huber wrote, future historians may well look back upon our time and write, not about how many pounds of pesticides we used or didn't apply, but by how willing we are to sacrifice our children and future generations for this massive genetic engineering experiment that is based on flawed science and failed promises just to benefit the bottom line of a commercial enterprise. So I think everybody's going to come back up to answer questions if you have questions, but I wanted to show you this. This is a patient. You have to make it to the next meal, so stop the child. This is a patient of mine, and a typical patient. She had severe incapacitating migraines. She was on 3 or 4 drugs for migraines. And she came in, and I thought, she probably has a leaky gut, because so many people with migraines have that. And what a leaky gut means is that, you know, food comes in this end and goes to that end, and along the way, you extract out of the food, you digest it, you absorb what you need, and then the rest of it goes on out. And if part of the function of the gut is not just processing the food, it's also providing a barrier function. So, if you have, this is what the gut looks like. Okay? If you have a leaky gut, and, oh, did I say genetically modified foods will cause a leaky gut? It gets like this. So, food can, not, you know, pieces of corn, but small food particles, you know, the essence of food can kind of leach in and leach out, and your immune system can see what's in your gut. Now, we first started recognizing this, a number of years ago, when there was a study in England where they gave patients that had rheumatoid arthritis doxycycline. And about 1/3 of them got better and never had rheumatoid arthritis again. It's not that there were germs in their joints. There were abnormal germs in their guts. And if they had a leaky gut, the immune system was able to see it and then cross-react with the joint tissue. So when you kill the bad bugs in the gut, the joint tissue calmed down, the immune system calmed down, the inflammation calmed down, the antibodies went away, and the joints healed. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So I see lots of people with leaky gut. I have had a leaky gut. Candida can cause leaky gut. All kinds of things can do it. But when I take care of patients, one of the things I tell them is you have to get off of GMO foods. So she came in, and this is a blood test that looked at all the different foods, a bunch of different foods. And you don't need to know the specifics. What you need to know is there were a lot of red bars. She was sensitive to a lot of different foods. Okay? 1 year later, after being on an organic diet, no GMO food, this was her test. I don't need to get blood tests on all of you. Probably 90% of you have some degree of leaky gut because the GMO foods cause it, the glyphosate causes it, the inflammation that's triggered in your gut hits, it starts damaging there, and that's, you have to have a leaky gut to get autoimmune disease, for example. Rheumatoid arthritis, MS, lupus, etc., etc. All those people have leaky guts. But you don't even have to have a really bad diagnosis like that. Many of us do, especially if we're eating GMOs. So, clean up your diets, eat organic foods, and get a great healthy gut. If your gut isn't healthy, you're not either.
Thank you again, Dr. Elizabeth Vaughan. So, what we're going to do, this is the interactive portion. So, and she is actually Dr. Vaughan's idea. It's really great. So, for those of you who have questions for the health and stuff like that, we have Dr. on the political side. We're going to have Glenn Bradley here, and they'll do Q&A.
Let me see your signs.
For those who, you can listen, but when we mention the tip card, which apparently is now endorsed by Dr. Vaughan, which I think is really awesome, you can go over to those 3 booths over there, and we'll have actually the tip cards. You can just pick up a couple and take them out with you, and use them over the weekend wherever you go for a restaurant or a grocery store. So again, when she was talking about go to an organic place, Deep Roots is right down the street. That place is fantastic. I've been a member, I think, for 2 years now. It's a co-op. And then you have other places. Again, I'd like to thank Natural Triad Magazine, Julie Millinek, who runs that. Dr. Vaughan is also involved with that, with the Vaughan Integrated Medicine Clinic.
Just getting your sign.
If you saw the little flyers or whatever, they handed those out like at their.
Have you heard that they don't approval for using agent
No. She said that there's something about approving Agent Orange, which is also a Monsanto product.
Right, because they're saying around the business. And they got FDA approval for, I think, 2 studies, and I think there might be now, I'm just wondering if where is that law?
All right, she's saying that someone is working through the system to try to approve or has approved Agent Orange for use on corn.
Which I forget the name of that chemical, but that's what they have approved or are approving.
I don't know about that per se. I do know that. Did someone talk about how they came up with the GMO foods and the GMO gene in the first place? The very, very first place. You know where that came from? Monsanto had a whole bunch of Roundup, out back that they didn't, that spilled or something like that. And the Monsanto scientists found little plants growing in it. Ooh. So that's where the genes came from that they now insert into the genetically modified foods. All I know is that Monsanto produced DDT. It produced Agent Orange. With that track record, I would not trust anything that Monsanto produced. Period.
I guess I just keep your eye on it. I heard about it.
Right. Thank you. I love your T-shirt. That's something I didn't say. Buy local and buy organic. D-proof. Thank you. Other questions?
Question.
Question, yes, sir.
Right now we're talking about GMO in the food. A question for the doctor and for Glenn Bradley. The GMO in the food, and you went over that. Can you also talk about the effects on the body that fluoride might have, the fluoride that's in the water? And for Glenn Bradley, what's the best way we can introduce legislation to get rid of that?
The people who originally said that fluoride should be put into the water have all decided that they were wrong. There may still be a place for fluoride applications in your dentist office, but not in toothpaste, not in the water, not when you're swallowing it, period. Fluoride damages your pineal gland, which makes it harder to connect to your God, your source. It does all kinds of bad things to the body. It needs to be taken out of the water supplies across the country.
One of the things that we don't hear a lot is that the original application of fluoride into the water system was not designed for personal health. It was a waste product that they couldn't dump. So they ended up saying, hey, in X concentrations, we don't think it's harmful to the human body, so we're going to sell it as good for teeth, and that way we have a place to put the fluoride since we can't put it in a dump. So the original idea behind water fluoridation was as waste disposal, quite frankly. So that's one thing that we have to remember. The other thing is the fluoride was first used in a human application in 1943 Germany to keep people calm and not to rebel and to respect authority. So there's a lot of these things that are not really shared publicly today.
It's also run that.
Exactly. So what we can do in terms of getting rid of our water sources is already happening around the nation. This is not something that you're likely to see going on at the state level or the federal level, but it's happening at the local levels all over the place because the people who control a water reservoir control the water that come from that. So if you go to the Carr Lake Association and you talk to them about their water supply, or you go to the Falls Lake where Raleigh gets our water supply, and the local people are the ones that are going to have far more control over whether water is fluoridated or not. So your best bet to get fluoride out of the water is to talk to the folks that control your water source to have it removed from that point.
Thank you.
I just needed to cut in for a brief commercial update. I forgot to mention that these cards, we have the artwork online at the GMO.gso.com if you just click on the tip card tab. And we've got it set up where you can go to Office Depot and get like the Avery stock where it's like 10 up, and you can just print these out on your own. And we also have the file if you want to go to a local printer and get, like a couple hundred printed up professionally. So that's the end of the 30-second commercial. Commence normal programming. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
This is obvious, but I think it needs to be said. Joy, I think, said grow your own. She's right. But if you go out and buy the plants, they're going to be Monsanto plants. When you buy the seeds, they're going to be Monsanto seeds. You have to get heirloom seeds.
Correct. She was talking about when we grow our own food, we have to be careful about the seed we buy because most of the plants and seeds will have originated from Monsanto or Monsanto-type companies. There are a variety of companies out there that do provide heirloom seeds. My personal favorite is Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. There's also, that's not the only one. There's a bunch of companies out there. The key word that you have to bear in mind is heirloom. Heirloom seeds. They're the ones that have not been infected with GMO.
Why is it that there are no local news channels out here to cover an event like this?
Media blackout.
She asked why are the local news channels not here covering this event? There was a whole lot of people here, and Monsanto has been engaging in a PR campaign to smear us. You would think that this would be something that the local news would want to cover. They're not here because their money comes from selling commercials to the very people who are poisoning us.
Well, wait a second.
You got Carolina Liberty Pack.
Is there a local TV station here? Raise your hand.
Yes, there is. It's Channel 14 at Sagaluli. We're walking down there on the street.
Thank you.
And the News and Record was here.
And the News and Record was here. So support those organizations. Yes, ma'am.
Did anybody mention that the former vice president of Monsanto is now with the FDA? A lot of people trust the FDA. No conflict of interest there.
The former
Vice president.
You're right. She asked whether everyone knew that the former vice president of Monsanto is in charge of the FDA or one of the higher ups in the FDA, and this is his second or third tenure here. There's a revolving door. He's been there several times. Is it any surprise that so many of our legislators have been duped?
It's a phenomenon called the revolving door. It exists not only in the FDA and Monsanto, it exists in pretty much every area of government. The big bankers are the ones that are in charge of the Treasury Department. The Monsanto people are the ones in charge of the FDA. This is what I talked about when I talked about regulatory capture. They're called captured regulators. And what happens is the people that we trust to regulate our food are actually controlled by the people who are poisoning us. This has been going on almost since the beginning of the FDA. And part of the problem is the process by which laws are written. They always go to what they call the key stakeholders, and the stakeholders are the companies that they're trying to regulate. So the problem you have with regulatory agencies like the FDA is they're generally stocked up with the former vice presidents or the people who have a major profit interest in the companies that you're fighting.
What do we do about that?
You replace the establishment.
Whoa!
You stop buying their line of garbage and you vote out the folks, whether they're your party, the other party, it doesn't matter. If they're there, if they're doing the wrong thing, you get rid of them no matter what.
Get educated by local and
On Facebook.
Grow your own.
grow your own.
Yeah!